Do you know how many projects you made this year? Go ahead, take a quick guess. I bet you're wrong. Let's talk about some ways to keep track of our projects so that we can know exactly what we've accomplished next year. Hello, and welcome to Bla Bla Black Sheep, a weekly yarny podcast where I, Sarah Korth of SEK Handmade, talk all things yarny. Welcome. I am so glad you are here. I would love it if you would like this video, subscribe, and maybe even share it with a friend. We are all about community here, so I would love it if this would spur conversation between you and somebody else, maybe even in person, about keeping track of projects, or if you jump into the comments and talk about your experience with tracking projects, or if you have an idea that I didn't share. I'd love to hear. Today I'm wearing my Winslow cowl. It has gotten frigid here, and so something around my neck to keep me cozy is a must. I absolutely love my Winslow cowl. It's made of a super simple stitch. This is a great project to practice the waistcoat stitch on. Also a great practice project, say that 10 times fast, a great practice project for trying mohair. I used Zero by the Fiber Company instead of a traditional mohair, and let me tell you guys, it is so soft and really lovely to work with. I am just tickled pink that my earrings from Pickled Pottery match my cowl so well. These are so fun and adorable. I went to go look for Pickled Pottery this morning, and I don't know if she's maintaining a selling platform anymore. She might just be doing craft shows and whatnot. So I'll link her Facebook page below so that you can check it out if you want to give her stuff a little gander. All right, let's dive into today's topic. A few years ago, I started seeing people share what projects they'd made throughout the year, and I realized that I had no idea how many I had made. I'm one of those people who has a terrible memory for these sorts of things. I am constantly underestimating what I have accomplished, and I'm the type of person who feels really good to know that I've checked some boxes and accomplished some things. So to me, it made perfect sense to keep track of my yarny projects somehow. Now, I tend to be an overthinker, and so I went all in on several ways to track my projects. You do not need to do that. I'm going to give you quite a few ideas today. I say give one or two a try, run with them. This is not a life or death situation though, people, so let's not panic. I think the first thing in making any sort of tracking system is deciding what you want to track. I've been talking about finished projects, but you certainly don't have to track that. You could track how many projects you finished, yardage you've gone through. You may only make 2 blankets a year, but that could be thousands of yards of yarn that you've used. So think about what might be fun to track and don't just box yourself into number of projects. You can also track how many skeins of yarn you've used if mathing the yardage feels like too much. Also, you could track some kind of unique things like how many ends have you woven in throughout the year, or what are new skills you've picked up. It all depends on the purpose behind why you're tracking. Are you tracking just to keep track of something, to have a memory? Are you tracking to encourage yourself to fulfill a goal of something like using up a bunch of stash yarn, where yards or skeins might really help you keep track of that? Or if a goal is to learn new things, keeping a list of new skills you've added throughout the year, even small skills. Do not overlook the small stuff. That moves you towards your goal too. Can help you keep track and feel good about your goal and continue to motivate you throughout the year to keep crafting or moving towards your goal when it is inevitably at some point going to feel hard. Once you've decided what you want to track, you need to decide how you're going to track it. My first suggestion for this is keep it simple. If it is something that adds stress to your life without adding immense joy, you're not going to stick with it. I have often thought that I would love to be a journaler. I would love to be the kind of person who sits down and writes out all the details of all of my projects. And so I buy the journal and then I half journal my first project. So be honest with yourself. If you want to be a journaler, but you always give up on journals, then keeping an in-depth journal probably is not the place to start. On the other side of that, if you are someone who enjoys journaling, that could be the perfect solution. You could keep track of several things in some sort of bullet journal or journal that you have organized yourself, and that may bring you lots of joy to have all of that information compiled into one spot. For those of us who are not journalers, I have several other ways that you can keep track of your projects that are really simple. I first started out with this little box. I love it because it's pretty and it can sit out, and then it's not hidden away, and it reminds me to keep track of my yarn labels. As you can see though, this cute little box quickly overflowed, and so currently what is in here are yarn labels from projects, patterns mostly, that I haven't finished. And then I've just put in my closet a little baggie with all my extra yarn labels. There's a lot in here. I'll have to go through and count these by the end of the year and just see how many yarns I've used. I love keeping track of my yarn labels because I feel like, well, I'm a person who keeps a lot of stash on hand. I tell myself it's because I'm a designer. Really, I just can't stop buying yarn. But even my kids have accused me of not using the yarn that I have, and this is evidence that I do use yarn, and a lot of it. I maybe just buy faster than I use. So that's a simple way. Every time you take off a yarn band, stick it in some place, and then you'll always have it there to count back through and see how much yarn you really are using up. Now, if the thought of hoarding yarn bands makes you nervous, my friend Bonnie came up with the perfect solution for that, and that is her yarn journal. This is her 2024 one that I have hot in hand, but she's making a 2025 one, and I will link to it in the show notes below. This is just, it's a small, look at how thin that is. Very small. You could keep this in a craft bag or a craft cart, and inside it has all these adorable little skeins of yarn, and all you do is decide what they represent. Do they represent a project? Do they represent a full skein of yarn used? Do they use a partial skein? Do they represent a partial skein used up? This you can customize to your own thing, and then you can keep track of things like projects, yarns. Very little detail here, but super sleek and compact, and really great for people who don't want clutter around. You could also keep a digital record. Ravelry has the opportunity to make projects for each of your patterns. This can be as complex or as simple as you want. You can add in yarn, where you got it from, what hook you used, pictures, notes, how happy you were with the pattern, all of these things to help you keep track. And one of the really fun things is if you keep track of your projects and you add in the yards of yarn you used per project, Ravelry will keep a running total for you of yards used. So if you've put in projects in the past, you could make note maybe on a calendar what yardage you're at now, do a really good job of keeping track of all of your projects throughout the year, and then check that at the end of the year, see how many yards you've used. A very simple journaling that I do is at the back of my planner that I love. It has some blank pages, and I always choose one of these back pages at the beginning of the year. I put just a little tabby so I know right where it is, and then I just write projects I finished up. I write the month, I list the projects I finished up that month, and then I total them all because I do often work more projects than designs. And so while I have published 36 patterns this year, I've worked way more than 36 projects. So it's just fun to see how my productivity ebbs and flows and what projects I've done throughout the year. All right, hiding over here, I have my most ridiculous tracking that I do. I found this glass jar, I don't even know where, let's be honest, probably TJ Maxx or some other store similar to that. It has the honeycomb texture on it, which I really love. I find this very visually appealing. For some people, this might feel like chaos and stress, but to me, I think it's so beautiful to see all of the colors of yarn I've chosen throughout the year. And what this is ends that I have snipped off. So I weave in my ends, I block my project, I snip off my ends, and then I just throw them in this jar. And then at the end of the year, I like to go through and count how many ends I've woven in. Here's the thing. It's ridiculous, but it brings me joy because I hate weaving in ends. And so knowing that I've accomplished so many of them just makes me happy. That being said, I want to reiterate one last time that this needs to be about something that brings you joy and pleasure and satisfaction, and not just something you feel like you should do because you feel like you should do it. Craft is our hobby. It should be joyful. And if any of these things do not bring you joy, don't do them. But if one or several of them do, I encourage you to add it to your crafting journey because it's just a lot of fun to look back at the end of the year on all the things that you've done. All right, I have a couple quick announcements. I have a new tiered pattern system coming next week. It will include a cozy and a cowl that will be new to match a hat pattern that was one of my first that I absolutely love, and I thought it needs all the things. So next week, all the things are coming. If you want to be reminded of that pattern becoming available and get the very best discount code, I encourage you to sign up for my newsletter because I'll send you a reminder and a great coupon code right to your inbox. The last thing I want to remind you is that WIP wrap-up is coming in January. If you have some things that are stressing you out right now that you're trying to power through, finishing up in December, don't power through. Release the stress and come in January. We'll finish them up then. It'll be fine. WIP wrap up is a great time. Lots of encouragement, lots of projects finished up. So stress less now. We'll take care of it later. Thank you so much for joining me today. I would love it if you would like this video, subscribe, and as I said, share it with a friend who might enjoy tracking their projects next year. No, I don't think we will see you back here next week. Next week, I will be spending extra time with my family who are home from school and traveling for visits and whatnot, so there will be no episode of Bla Bla Black Sheep. We are at episode, 88. So if you haven't watched all those, go back and watch some of the old episodes. Check out last week's video for some suggestions if you want to know where to go first. I appreciate you. I hope you have a lovely end of the year. We'll see you back here the very 1st of January because that's a Wednesday. Have a great end of the year and happy crafting.